There is a certain famous international sporting event beginning in Great Britain this evening. Unfortunately, in order to preserve the integrity of its brand, I am not allowed to mention it by name. What I can say is that this particular sporting event is the pinnacle of any athlete's career, and that it has its origins in ancient Greece around 776 BC. With this exciting event in mind, we have decided to make the food of ancient Greece the focus of the first mini-series of Archaeology Gastronomy. What we present will be a broad brushstroke, a flavour, pun intended, as ancient Greece covers a large period of time and many distinct city-states. What we know of ancient Greek cuisine comes from literary sources, writing, from cookbooks to plays, and also art, drawings, sculpture, and images on pottery. We will return to this in a later video. The Greek diet came from two main sources. First, the rocky terrain of Greece herself, and secondly, although arguably primarily, from the Aegean, the sea surrounding Greece. For many, the preparation of food was an indication of character. It separated the good from the bad, the Greek from the barbarian. In the Odyssey, good and bad characters are highlighted by their eating habits, and Herodotus himself partly identified foreigners by their cuisine. The Greeks ate mainly from the so-called Mediterranean triad, firstly cereals such as wheat, barley, or millet. Second, they produced and drank wine, red, white, and rosé. And the third element is the fruit that we can see being harvested here. Any ideas? Well, they're olives, and also, of course, olive oil. The Greeks also grew vegetables, especially legumes, beans and peas of various varieties, and a staple food for many, which we will examine in a later video, the lentil. Other forms of veg were also available, including cabbages and onions. The Greeks also enjoyed fruit, often dried, including figs, pomegranates, and raisins. To the Greeks, and many others, honey was the primary sweetener. Sugar was known of, but it was reserved as a medicine for painful bladder or kidneys. Meat was eaten, pigs being the most common. Indeed, sausages were available for both the poor and the rich. Another common domestic animal was the goat, for meat, but also for milk and for cheese. However, it was fish, not meat, that provided most of the protein in the ancient Greek diet. All manner of sea creatures and fish were caught and eaten. Those cereals were undeniably the staple of the Greek diet. The two main grains, wheat and barley, were ground into flour and formed into bread, often flavoured with honey or cheese. In the urban environments of ancient Greece, fresh vegetables were expensive. Poorer citizens had to make do with dried vegetables, and lentil stew was crucial to a workman's diet. Cheese, onion, and garlic were portable foods associated with soldiers on campaign. In one Athenian old comedy play, the smell of onions represents soldiers and follows them round, and they cry out in joy, "No more helmet, no more cheese, nor onions." Typically, the ancient Greeks only ate meat which had been properly sacrificed to a god, or hunted and killed in the wild, in its own environment. The consumption of fresh meat was accompanied by a religious ritual in which the share for the gods, fat and bones, was burned. The human share, the meat, was grilled and consumed, though often in food business the owner didn't have time to burn bones for the gods. For a drink, if you were lucky, you lived near to a natural spring. Women would fetch the water. Sometimes barley would be mixed with water to make a meal and drink in one, a gruel called kykion. The drinking of animal milk was seen as a highly uncivilized practice, if not repulsive, though it probably did occur in the countryside. For the most part, however, the ancient Greek diet was complemented by a drink made from grapes, wine. Jindiana Bones will be exploring wine and evening parties known as symposia in a future video. The ancient Greeks had approximately 3 meals per day. Breakfast was taken at sunrise. This usually consisted of barley bread, stale from the day before, dipped in wine, with figs or olives. Pancakes were also made with wheat flour, olive oil, honey, and curdled milk. Around noon, or early in the afternoon, there was time for a quick lunch. This was again bread dipped in wine, along with olives, figs, cheese, or dried fish. When out and about, it was also possible to purchase takeaway from shops which roasted meat all day over charcoal. The main meal of the day was usually taken at home around sunset, and generally consisted of vegetables, fruit, plenty of fish, and also honeyed treats like cakes and nut clusters. Men and women ate separately. When the house was small, men ate first, women afterwards, and slaves last of all. The Greeks normally ate while sat upon chairs or benches, or reclined upon couches during banquets. Tables were initially rectangular, but by the 4th century BC had become round, with legs decorated to resemble animals. Bread could be employed as a plate, however terracotta bowls were more common, and by the Roman period precious metals and glass were also being used. Cutlery was uncommon. People ate with their fingers. Forks were unknown, knives were used to cut meat, and spoons were employed for soup. Bread could also be used to scoop soup, and it was used as a napkin, and then thrown to the dogs, or the slaves. So there you have it, a brief overview and a flavour of ancient Greek cuisine. It's actually made me rather hungry. Let's go to the kitchen now at 41 Feasts to make our first dish.
Hello, my name's Nicola and I blog at 41 Feasts. Today, for the first in our recipes from ancient Greece, we're cooking honey glazed prawns. This is a very simple recipe and these are the ingredients you'll need. Some olive oil, some Worcester sauce, honey, freshly cut oregano and some black pepper. What you need to do is take 200 grams of raw prawns and make a marinade with 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil, 1.5 tablespoons of honey and a tablespoon of Worcester sauce with a tablespoon of freshly chopped oregano. Now I used about 2/3 of this to marinate the prawns for about half an hour. Some of the recipes that Mark and I looked at for this talked about cooking your olive oil, your honey, your oregano and your Worcester sauce all together and then putting the prawns in, boiling the sauce to reduce it and then pouring it over the prawns. Boiling honey of course causes it to caramelise. So what we've done is we've marinated the prawns first and are cooking it gently in the sauce. This recipe would work fine with cooked prawns as well. I've used local honey, as I think that's what the ancient Greeks would have done. Honey was what the Greeks used to flavour food rather than sugar. They preferred to save sugar, although they had it, as a medicine. So what you've got is your prawns cooking very gently. I did wonder with the other recipes whether it was just that the Greeks didn't cook on gas as we're doing and they cooked on a more gentle heat, or maybe even bake the prawns in the oven, which actually you could do. You could bake them, or in fact you could grill them, putting them on skewers as well, either, as I say, under the grill or in the oven. I think those prawns are looking pretty much cooked. So we will turn off the heat and pop them on the plate in the natural juices that they have. And then I will take the remaining 1/3 of the honey, Worcester sauce and oregano and just drop them over like that. And there you have honey glazed prawns in olive oil with honey, Worcester sauce and oregano. Now Mark, before we taste it we just need to sprinkle the prawns with a little bit of black pepper. Tuck in.
Of course, no forks.
Absolutely not.
That's really good. It's kind of odd at first, like honey and fish, but it's good. It's good. Mm. You can really taste the oregano as well.
You can't you? Now, Worcester sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Not your ancient Greek traditional ingredient, I would have thought. Why did you have me cook with Worcester sauce?
Because original recipes would have called for gyros, or in the Roman world, garum, which isn't all that easy to come by. But the best equivalent which we have in modern Britain is Worcestershire sauce. It's anchovy based, kind of like garum, but also some other folk suggest using, say, fish sauce from Japan and the like, but that's just a bit too salty. So this is a bit closer to the real thing. Well, closer than getting a barrel full of rotting fish. There you go.
Thank you.
So, so very nice. So when you can see us next week, we'll be doing another fantastic ancient Greek recipe to coincide with the sports event, which will not be named. And if you want to find out more about the wonderful Nicola and her blog, the link is in the underbar below, as is a link to the recipe that we have just cooked. So tune in next time for another and possibly slightly larger recipe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.